beginning to think Blaze TV is low-hanging fruit. How's it going, everybody? I'm McRed2. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a video made by Blaze TV featuring a Mark Levin. I'm not sure if I know who that is, but they're going to be talking about why we can't abolish the Electoral College. The Electoral College that definitely needs to go away. When the Electoral College was originally created, if you didn't know, it was created and designed by southern states, which had lower populations than the industrial north states, because they wanted to have more say and more influence in the federal government. So what they did is they wanted to have a voting system where each individual state is allocated votes based off of their population. And they wanted to count the slaves that they had in their state's population, despite the fact that they didn't have citizenship, they weren't even considered fully people, and they couldn't vote. But they still wanted those people, the slaves, to be counted amongst their population so that they can have a stronger sway in the federal government. And it's broken even today. Take Wyoming, for example. Wyoming is a state with just over 500,000 people living there, and yet it gets 3 electoral college votes. Not a lot, right? If we look at Washington state, where I live, that's a state with over 7.5 million people living there, and it gets 12. An individual voting in Wyoming has 3 times the voting power that I do voting in Washington state. And it's a similar story all across the country, but the Electoral College ultimately is the only reason why Republicans have been able to gain the presidency in the last 2 decades. Out of the last 7 elections, Republicans have lost the popular vote in 6 of them. And out of the last 7 elections, we've had 2 Republican presidents. One of them was for 2 terms. Donald Trump lost the popular vote in 2016 by 3 million votes, and he lost it this time by over 7. Republicans are scared that if we get rid of the popular vote, they're not going to be able to have at least executive power anymore, which is not really that much of a bad thing, considering a majority of America is at least liberal, slightly progressive. They're not conservative, is what I'm trying to say. But Democrats, or at least the Democratic Party, has a majority in this country. Leftists like me should and do vote blue, even if centrist, neo-lib Democrat politicians don't necessarily represent my views. They're better than the alternative. But let's go ahead and take a look and see why they feel we shouldn't abolish the Electoral College.
I want to get to the Washington Post has a big editorial, or did the other day, abolish the Electoral College. Abolish the Electoral College.
Yes.
I've told you many, many times that this is the objective of the Democrat Party and the left, the media, again, one and the same.
Okay, first of all, the media and the left are not one and the same. The media, or at least a majority of it, tends to have a liberal bias, sure, but they aren't left by any means. And secondly, abolishing the Electoral College is not the Democrats' goal. That's the leftist goal, and a lot of Democrats do feel that way, but as far as the DNC is concerned, that's not high on their list of priorities, even though it should be. Universal health care, not high on their list of priorities, even though it should be. Police reform, not high on their list of priorities. Abolishing the Electoral College, ending gerrymandering. All these things that these Republicans try to say that leftists, like me, who actually do value those things, want, are not actually things that the Democrats want. Like I said, they're centrist neolibs. They're not leftists, yet they try to paint Democrats and leftists as one and the same. It's not true, but go on.
By abolishing the Electoral College, the cities that you see now, whether it's Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Detroit, Atlanta, Milwaukee, Chicago, all these heavy populations.
You mean population centers? Yeah, all of those places. So the majority of Americans live in or near a major city. That's just factually accurate. The majority of Americans live either in or near a major city. He's going to say that these big cities are going to control the election. Like, they've been trying to say this for the longest time. If you get rid of the Electoral College, then California and New York will decide the election. Not really, but they'll have an appropriate level of say in the decision, considering millions of Americans live in those two locations. I think it's something like 40 million people live in California. They should have a larger say than they do. But there are major cities all over the US, not just in California and in New York. I bet you that's what he's going to say, though. He's going to go back to the same old argument.
Population centers will control the government.
Here it is. No, we will not control the government, because the executive branch is one branch of the government. And right now, the Republicans control the government. They control half of Congress. They control the judicial branch, and until January 20th, they control the executive branch. Republicans, a minority in America, control our government. But no, you're not going to have New York and California controlling the government. They'll have a larger say in who becomes president, but they're not going to control the government. You're still going to have senators and House representatives from all of the states, and the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, at least right now, looks like it's going to be red for a long ass time, because Trump was able to appoint 3 judges.
Meaning the Democrat Party will control the government. You understand that
I mean, that would be better than the Republicans doing it. It wouldn't necessarily be good, but you can push somebody who's like center left further left a lot easier than you can push somebody who's far right all the way over to the left. It's easier to do that. So yes, having Democrats running the government would be a good thing.
this whole United States of America was built on a number of compromises. The small states with smaller populations would never have joined the United States. You know, New York City doesn't feed itself. It relies on Kansas. It relies on Iowa. It relies on Idaho.
Yes, but Iowa and Kansas and all those other flyover states that are predominantly farmland rely on New York City for tax revenue to support their welfare programs and to pay for their education. Like, the blue states pay for the red states to exist. The least they could do is give us food. And California has a shit ton of farmland too. So like blue states can feed themselves. Upstate New York is huge. There's a lot of open area. I don't know if it's farmable. I'm not from there, but there's a lot of open area in New York. New York is not just Manhattan. You do realize that. Like, there's more to the state of New York than the little island at the bottom.
Philadelphia doesn't feed itself. We don't get energy.
Philadelphia doesn't feed itself, but I guarantee you a lot of their food comes from the rest of Pennsylvania, which is in the same state. Is it not? Am I wrong? There's farmland in Pennsylvania, and I guarantee you at least some of that food goes to Philly.
Energy from Minneapolis or Chicago, way out in North Dakota, in parts of Texas, western Pennsylvania, in more rural areas.
Yes, you need you have to farm in rural areas because you need large swaths of land. However, the majority of people live in cities, and those big cities pay for the rural areas.
That's where our energy comes from. And so what they're saying is what I've been warning about now for a long time. They don't want to represent Republicans, and they don't want to represent areas that they do not control.
No, they don't want to represent Republicans because Republicans are a minority. The minority should not be running the show. We're supposed to, I mean, we're a republic, but we pride ourselves on being a democracy. And in a democracy, the majority of people decide what's going to happen, and the minority does not, because they are a minority. We can't allow a minority to run the country into the ground at the expense of the majority.
And the fact is, if they destroy the Electoral College and they do these other things they want, we won't live in a republic, certainly not a constitutional republic anymore. That's why this vote in Georgia is so crucial.
Yes, we will. Holy shit. Why do they think that Democrats just want to get rid of the Constitution? The Constitution's really important. Democracy is really important. The republic and the way our government is structured is really important. We're not going to get rid of that just by removing Republicans from power. That would not serve the Democratic Party's best interests to do that. I mean, as a leftist, I don't like how this country's run, and I would make changes, but I'm not the Democrat Party. I'm not the DNC. These people are so scared of people that don't think like they do that they have convinced themselves that anybody to the left of them is going to turn America into a communist country, even though communism would be the abolition of the state, which Republicans and libertarians want, I guess. They want smaller government, and that's what communism would get you. But they've convinced themselves completely baselessly that their opponents are going to destroy this country to spite them. And they're so afraid of it, they would rather the country stagnate and die rather than progress forward.
If we lose Georgia by one vote, because the vice president of the United States is the president of the Senate and breaks all ties, you'll have a 50-50 Senate. Kamala Harris will sit in that chair. She will rule over the Senate. Biden will rule over the executive branch. Pelosi, even with her few numbers in majority, she'll rule over the House. They will destroy the Supreme Court. There'll be nowhere to go.
No, they'll add seats. Hopefully, God's willing, they will, but I doubt it. But there's been talks that they're going to add seats to the Supreme Court, which would kind of fit. We now have 13 federal courts, so it would only make sense that we would have 13 justices. The last time it was expanded from 7 to 9. We went from 7 federal court circuits to 9. And so we expanded the Supreme Court. It would only make sense that we went up to 13 and even it back out. But yeah, Kamala is going to do her job. One of the jobs of the vice president is to be a tiebreaker in the Senate. That's part of her job. Would you rather her not do her job? I mean, I know you would, but you would shit on her for not doing her job, but you're going to shit on her for doing her job. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation for her anyway. But hopefully they'll expand the Supreme Court and we'll actually be able to get something done in Congress if we get a 50-50 split.
And then they're going to enshrine, as they did in California, their permanency as a party.